Hello, I'm Mandy. 12 years. That's how long I've been married to David. Most days, I think we're solid. 3 kids, a mortgage, and the kind of rhythm that comes with years of shared chaos. But sometimes, like when I'm sorting through laundry or setting the table, my mind catches on small things. Little cracks I didn't notice before. Take Jonah, our middle son. He's 8, all wiry energy and wide, curious eyes. He's the one everyone says doesn't quite match his siblings. Where Olivia and Caleb both have David's darker hair and sturdy frame, Jonah is fairer, leaner. His features are softer, like they belong to someone else entirely. I'd never thought much of it. Kids are funny like that, pulling traits from who knows where. But a few weeks ago, David froze, holding a picture of my grandfather. He'd been flipping through an old album while Jonah and Olivia fought over a puzzle on the rug. "This is Jonah," he'd said, staring at the photo like it held some kind of secret. "No, that's my grandpa." "Jonah's great-grandfather," I replied, amused by how alike they were. "It's uncanny, isn't it?" David didn't answer, and the way his jaw tightened set me on edge. I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I didn't. I've learned when to let things lie. It's late when David finally comes to bed, his side of the mattress dipping under his weight. The room smells faintly of his soap, sharp and clean. I turn toward him, resting my head on my hand. "Everything okay?" I ask. He hesitates, a small pause, but I catch it. "Yeah. Long day," he says, not meeting my eyes. It's an answer, but not a real one. David has a way of holding things inside, letting them fester until they spill out all at once. I used to push him, but I learned early in our marriage that he'll talk when he's ready, or not at all. "Okay," I say, even though it isn't. I roll over, facing the wall, and try to push the unease aside. My grandfather's picture sits on the coffee table the next morning, right where David left it. I stare at it while Jonah balances a bowl of cereal on his lap, watching cartoons. "Why does Daddy keep looking at this?" he asks, pointing with a spoon. "Because he thinks it's neat how much you look like Grandpa," I say, brushing his hair out of his face. Jonah doesn't answer, too focused on the TV. I let my hand linger a second longer, smoothing down a stray curl. David's been strange lately, quieter, more distant. I'd wonder if it was work stress, but he hasn't mentioned anything. By the time he comes down the stairs, buttoning his shirt, I've pushed the thought aside. "You're taking Caleb to soccer, right?" I ask, pouring coffee into his travel mug. "Yeah," he says, but his voice is clipped. Distracted. He kisses me on the cheek, barely a touch, and grabs his bag. I stand there, holding my cup, staring at the door long after it closes behind him. Something's off. David's past isn't something we talk about often. Not because it's a secret, I knew before we married that he'd cheated in past relationships. He told me the way someone confesses to something they've moved past, like it was a phase, not a flaw. "I'd never do that to you," he'd said, and I believed him. Still do. But I've always been clear, cheating is a deal breaker. No second chances. No excuses. It's the one line I won't bend on, not after seeing what it did to my parents. That's why I never doubted him. Never questioned where he was or who he was with. Trust is the foundation of everything we've built. But now, there's this shadow hanging between us, and I can't figure out where it came from. Jonah laughs at something on the TV, and I smile automatically. But my chest feels tight, like I'm holding my breath. David's silence is louder than words, and it's only a matter of time before it breaks. By the 3rd day of David's mood, I've had enough. He's been hovering in this weird, half-distracted state, like his mind's someplace else entirely. At first, I let it go, hoping it would pass, but when he barely speaks during dinner and doesn't even notice Jonah's story about finding a frog at recess, my patience snaps. After the kids are in bed, I find him in the kitchen, staring into the fridge like the answers to life are tucked behind the milk. Okay, I say, leaning on the counter. What's going on? David straightens, closing the fridge door a little too hard. Nothing's going on. Don't do that, I say, crossing my arms. You've been acting strange for days. If something's wrong, just say it. He doesn't answer right away, and the silence between us stretches. Then, finally, he exhales and looks at me, his eyes dark and serious. Mandy, have you ever lied to me? About something big? The question lands like a slap. What? No. Why would you even ask that? It's about Jonah. His voice is steady, but there's something simmering underneath. He doesn't look like me. Or Olivia or Caleb. My chest tightens, the air suddenly heavy. What are you saying? I think we should do a paternity test. The words hit harder than I expect. For a second, I'm stunned silent, staring at him like he's grown a second head. When it sinks in, my voice shakes with the force of my anger. Are you serious right now? David runs a hand through his hair, avoiding my eyes. I'm not accusing you of anything. It's just, he looks so different. And when I saw that photo of your grandfather, I started thinking. No, I cut him off. You don't get to do this. Jonah is your son. End of story. Then why are you so upset? His tone sharpens, and now I can see it, the doubt, the suspicion he's been hiding. If you've got nothing to hide, what's the problem? The problem? The problem is that my husband, the man I've trusted for over a decade, is standing in our kitchen questioning my integrity. The problem, I say, my voice low and trembling, is that you're accusing me of cheating without actually saying the words. Do you even hear yourself? I'm not accusing you, he snaps. I can't stop thinking about it, okay? It's driving me crazy. I need to know. I shake my head, stepping away from him. No. I won't let you turn our family into some kind of experiment because you can't manage your paranoia. David reaches for me, but I pull back. Mandy, it's one test. That's all I'm asking. And what happens when the test comes back, David? What's the plan for undoing the damage you've already done? His face falls, but he doesn't answer. The next week is tense. We barely speak, each conversation laced with an undercurrent of anger and hurt. I try to go about life as usual, but every time I see David watching Jonah, I want to scream. He doesn't say anything more about the test, but the subject hangs between us, suffocating. One night, I catch him on the phone in the garage, his voice low. When he comes back inside, he doesn't meet my eyes. Did you go behind my back? I ask, my voice icy. David freezes in the doorway, guilt written all over his face. You did, I say, my chest tightening. It's not what you think, he says quickly. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I needed to know. You had no right. I shout, my voice echoing through the house. David stands there, unmoving, as I let the full weight of my anger crash down on him. I tell him how betrayed I feel, how disgusting it is to question my loyalty, how this isn't just about me, it's about Jonah. He doesn't fight back, doesn't argue. He just lets me yell, and when I finally stop, out of breath and trembling, he says quietly, the results came in today. For a second, everything goes still. And? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Jonah's mine, he says. Of course, he's mine. The relief on his face, the stupid, infuriating relief, makes me want to scream all over again. Get out, I say, pointing toward the door. Mandy. Out. David leaves, and when the door closes behind him, I sink onto the couch, shaking with anger. I don't see David again that night. He doesn't come back until late the next day, after I've taken the kids to my parents' house. Jonah, Olivia, and Caleb are happily running around in the backyard, as if nothing's wrong. But I'm unraveling. The moment I walked out of the house, leaving David alone with his thoughts and whatever version of truth he had in his head, I felt this sick weight in my chest. David shows up at my parents' house right after dinner, his face tired but trying to be calm. He doesn't even look at the kids, just at me, standing in the doorway like he's waiting for some sort of forgiveness to spill out of me. "Mandy," he starts, stepping forward, but I raise a hand to stop him. "Don't," I say. My voice is sharp, colder than I mean for it to be. "We're not having this conversation here." He stops, guilt creeping into his expression. "I'm sorry. I never should have suggested." "No," I cut him off. "You never should have done it in the first place." Jonah looks over at us, his brow furrowing. Olivia and Caleb are playing oblivious, but Jonah's always been the perceptive one. He doesn't miss things. I can see the wheels turning in his head, trying to make sense of why I'm standing here, blocking David from walking into my parents' house. David's eyes flick toward Jonah, and for the first time, I see a flicker of panic in his face. His shoulders slump as if the weight of what he's done finally hit him. But I don't care. I can't care. "You can't just do things like that, David," I say, struggling to keep my voice steady. "You don't get to question everything we've built over one moment of doubt." "I didn't mean for it to come out like that," he says, his voice rough now. "I thought." "You thought?" I laugh bitterly, shaking my head. "You thought that your little test would somehow fix everything? That you could just take a sample, get an answer, and everything would go back to normal?" "I didn't think it'd be easy," he mutters. "Then why? Why did you go behind my back?" The question hangs in the air, unanswered, and I see him squirm. I don't want to see it. I don't want to be standing here anymore, but I can't move. Not yet. Not when everything has shifted. "You've got to understand, Mandy," David says, finally meeting my eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. I didn't want to." "Didn't want to hurt me?" I snap. "What do you think you did? You violated my trust. You made me look like some kind of liar." He winces. It's a small, almost imperceptible motion, but it's there. And it only makes the anger burn hotter. "You don't get it," I say, my voice breaking. "You've crossed a line you can't take back. I don't know how to get past this." David's eyes widen, his brow knitting in confusion. "What do you mean?" "It's over, Mandy. The test came back. Jonah's mine." His face softens, and he steps closer. "You can't be upset anymore. It's over." "But I can't move forward. Not with this between us." "What about Jonah?" I ask quietly, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "What do you think this has done to him?" David's face falls. "I didn't." "You didn't think, David. You never do." I pull away, turning to look at the kids in the backyard. "Jonah heard us, you know. He saw you standing there with that stupid test. He doesn't understand why you doubted him. Why he wasn't enough." The guilt hits David like a physical blow, and he looks at the ground, unable to say anything. I take a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I've spent years building this life with him, years. And now it feels like it's crumbling under the weight of one stupid, pointless decision. "You need to leave," I say, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't do this right now. I can't even look at you." David doesn't argue. He just turns and leaves, and I stand there, feeling the empty space between us grow wider with each passing second. We don't speak again for 2 days. I keep the kids at my parents' house, letting them run wild and free, while I try to figure out how to breathe without feeling like I'm drowning. Jonah's been quiet since the whole thing started. He doesn't ask about his father, doesn't say much about anything. Caleb and Olivia are too young to understand, but Jonah is different. He knows. I can see it in the way he looks at me sometimes, his big brown eyes full of questions he's too scared to ask. On the third day, David calls, and I almost don't answer. But I do. I'm not sure why, maybe hoping that he's finally ready to admit what he did was wrong, that he's ready to fix things. Mandy, he starts, his voice low. I don't know what I expected, but I can't undo what I did. I let his words hang in the silence. I know I can't fix it, he continues. But I'm asking for your forgiveness. Not for the test, but for everything after. I've hurt you, and I'm sorry. For a moment, all I hear is the sound of my own breath. I don't know if I can forgive you, David, I say, the words slipping out before I can stop them. I don't know how to get past this. His voice cracks. Please. Don't give up on me. But I can't make any promises. Not anymore. Weeks pass before David and I finally sit down to talk. After everything that's happened, the accusations, the paternity test, the hurt, I'd sworn I'd never face him again. But somehow, we're here. In the living room, with the kids out with my parents, as if a simple conversation can undo the damage done. It doesn't feel like a conversation, though. It feels like a trial. David looks worse than I expected. He's lost weight, the lines on his face more pronounced, his eyes darker. But none of it matters. Nothing he says will change anything. Mandy, he begins, shifting in his seat, his voice barely above a whisper. I want to make things right. Do you? I say, narrowing my eyes. Do you really? He nods, but the hesitation in his movements betrays him. I know I hurt you. I know I broke your trust. But I didn't mean to. Stop, I cut him off. I don't want to hear about how you didn't mean to hurt me. You did. You did it in the worst way possible. You accused me of something I've never done. David swallows, and for a moment, I almost feel pity for him. But it's gone in an instant. He's destroyed this. He doesn't get to walk back in like nothing happened. I thought that by getting the test, we could prove everything was okay, he continues, his voice faltering. But I see now that I was wrong. You don't get it, I say, shaking my head. You thought that somehow, this test would fix everything. You thought if the results were in your favor, we could just move on. Like you could erase all the hurt you caused. You can't fix this, David. He leans forward, his hands clenched into fists. I know. But we can at least try. We can start over. We can make it work. No, I say firmly. The core issue here is your distrust. You never should have doubted me in the first place. And when you did, you broke something that can't be repaired. That's what this is really about. David opens his mouth, but the words die on his tongue. I can see the guilt in his eyes, but it's not enough. It's never enough. The real problem, I continue, is that you couldn't accept that Jonah, our son, looked different. You couldn't accept that his appearance didn't fit into your perfect image of what our family should be. You thought somehow, he wasn't yours. And that is the worst part of all of this. You believed I'd lie. That I'd pass another man's child off as yours. That's what you thought of me. David's face crumples, his jaw tightening as if he's about to speak, but then Jonah's voice cuts through the tension. Why does Dad hate me? Jonah's words hang in the air, thick with pain. I turn to him, my heart breaking as he stands in the doorway, his small frame trembling. Jonah, no, I say, rushing to him. He doesn't hate you. But Jonah looks at David, his face full of confusion. He doesn't talk to me anymore. He doesn't play with me like he does with Caleb and Olivia. David opens his mouth to speak, but the words are gone. He looks at Jonah, at me, and then back at Jonah, and it's clear that he hadn't even realized how badly his actions had affected our son. He hadn't realized how deep the hurt went. This, I say, pointing between the two of them, this is what you've done. Jonah is hurting, David. And you're too blind to see it. David's eyes shift, but it's too late for him to understand. I never cheated on you, David, I say quietly, letting the words land with the weight they deserve. But you doubted me. And you hurt Jonah. And I can't forgive that. The room is silent except for Jonah's soft sniffles. David opens his mouth to respond, but I don't want to hear it anymore. His apologies mean nothing when the damage has already been done. Mandy, please, he says, desperation creeping into his voice. I swear I never meant to hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt him. I shake my head. It doesn't matter, David. It's done. I can see the finality in his face. He knows there's no coming back from this. Are we getting a divorce? David asks, his voice trembling. Yes, I say, my voice steady. I'm moving forward with the divorce. I can't live like this. Not anymore. David's face falls, and for the first time, I see a flicker of regret in his eyes. But it's too late. The trust is gone. The family I fought so hard to build is shattered. And it's all because of him. The weeks leading up to Christmas feel like an emotional battle I'm not equipped for. The holidays were always supposed to be a time for us to come together, but this year, they're pulling us further apart. David insists on trying to maintain the illusion that everything can be fixed. He still calls, still sends messages, still hopes for some kind of resolution, but I know it's too late for that. I can't pretend anymore. I won't. The conversation about Christmas comes a week before the holiday, when David demands we talk things out for the sake of the kids. It's supposed to be a simple question, but it's not. Nothing about this is simple anymore. I don't want to do split custody, David says, his voice thick with frustration. It's Christmas, Mandy. We've always spent it together. The kids deserve that. I'm not going to pretend everything is fine just because it's Christmas, David, I reply, standing firm. We're not a family anymore. You broke that. David opens his mouth to argue, but I stop him. This isn't about what you want. This is about what the kids need. Jonah needs to see his father, but not like this. Not under these conditions. His expression hardens, and I can feel the anger rising in him. But I've had enough. I'm done trying to make him understand. Fine, David snaps, running a hand through his hair. But I want Olivia and Caleb for the morning. I'll take them to my parents' house. You can have them for the afternoon. It's fair. I know what he's doing. He's trying to make it seem like a reasonable compromise. But it's not. Not when Jonah won't even look at him. No, I say quietly. Jonah isn't going with you. He doesn't want to see you. And I'm not going to force him into something he's not ready for. David's jaw tightens. You're punishing me, Mandy. I'm not punishing you, I reply, the words heavy. I'm protecting him. From you. He deserves to be around people who don't make him feel like he's hated. David stands there, seething, and for a moment, I think he might push further, demand that Jonah be part of this forced reunion. But he doesn't. He knows it's futile. Jonah's decision has been made, and nothing David says will change it. You're making a huge mistake, David mutters, his voice low. I'm not, I say. This is what's best for Jonah. It's what's best for all of us. The call ends in silence. I don't hear from him for the rest of the day, and I can't say I miss it. The days leading up to Christmas are tense, filled with moments of trying to appear normal for the kids. But underneath it all, the hurt never goes away. Jonah remains withdrawn, his mood darker than usual, and I know he's struggling to make sense of everything. He barely speaks to David, and when he does, it's only one-word answers. David's attempts at reaching out to the kids have become less frequent, and I think he's finally starting to realize the full weight of his actions. But it's too little, too late. The damage is done. Jonah has already made up his mind. On Christmas Eve, David sends a final message, asking if he can come over for a few minutes. He wants to see the kids before the holiday ends. I don't respond immediately. Instead, I let the message sit, the finality of his request hanging in the air. Eventually, I reply with a simple, no. I can feel the anger coming through in his next text, but it doesn't bother me. It shouldn't bother me anymore. Christmas morning comes, and it's quiet. Caleb and Olivia are too young to fully understand the weight of what's happening, but Jonah knows. I can see it in his eyes every time he looks at me, every time he glances at the empty space where his father should be. I try to make it as normal as possible, but it's not. It won't be. At my parents' house, there's an undercurrent of tension that I try to ignore. My mother gives me a sympathetic look, and my father doesn't say much, though I can feel his disapproval of David's behavior. My father's angry, too. But it's not just because of the divorce. He's angry at David for how he's treated Jonah. He's angry that David hasn't realized how much damage he's done to his own son. David doesn't call. He doesn't text. I wonder if he even bothers to spend the day with his family or if he's too consumed with his own rage to care. But in a way, it's a relief. There's no more pretending. No more pushing for things that can't be fixed. I'm sitting on the couch, Jonah curled up beside me, when my father finally speaks. I think you did the right thing, Mandy, he says, his voice steady. I know it's not easy, but you're protecting your kids. And that's what matters. I nod, though I don't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. The relief is fleeting. This isn't about being right. It's about saving Jonah, about giving him the space he needs to heal from the wound David created. The divorce proceedings continue, despite David's resistance. He tries to talk me out of it, tries to convince me that there's still hope, but I know better. The trust is gone, and there's nothing left to salvage. Jonah still refuses to speak to him, and David's silence has become a familiar, suffocating presence in my life. I've made my decision. And no matter how hard he tries to change my mind, I won't back down.